Hi, I'm Kelly Golding, and this is going to be my final presentation for substance abuse counseling. Um, I am going to be giving an educational presentation on stress management in recovery to an individual alcoholic client, one-on-one. So I'll be talking into the camera um, as if I'm talking to my client. Um, all right, so we're going to be talking today about stress management in recovery, which is actually a paramount because as you're going through this experience, um, stress is believed to be the number one cause of relapse. So in order to successfully avoid relapse, we need to talk about stress and understand the effect that stress has um, in all of our lives, and especially in yours, since it's your recovery we're talking about. Okay, so today I'm going to go through a lot of information. I'm going to go through causes of stress, both general and specific to you. I'm going to talk about symptoms of stress, what it looks like when you're experiencing stress so you can recognize it, the idea of preparing in advance for some of these stressful scenarios, and then especially things that you can do, both to prepare for stress and also recommended activities or coping mechanisms to help you to manage your own stress day to day. And then after we talk about these things, we'll go over any questions that you have. All right, so I'm going to go through a lot of this information. So keep in mind your questions or write them down, and we'll go through them after. So causes of stress. Stress is obviously we all experience it. Everybody does. It's a very natural byproduct of change. That's a very general definition. Is that by change we experience stress in the process of adapting. And even though everybody experiences change and stress, it's very important to note that through addiction, our brains become wired to be extra sensitive to stressful experiences, and that's part of addiction because it's the stress that drives us into whatever it is our addictive behaviors are, in your case, alcohol. So it's normal to expect greater amounts of stress, like when you're embarking on a new relationship, or when you're getting married, or when you're expecting a new baby, looking for a job, or starting a new position in your job. And you right now are going to be going through all of these different phases of change because you're embarking on changing your addictive behaviors. You're moving into recovery. So change is what we want, right? We just need to manage the stress in the meantime. So it'll take a little extra diligence on your part to understand what personally causes you stress, and so that we can make a game plan for those scenarios. So for example, like I'm just going to give a couple examples of things that we've talked about before. I know that being late causes stress for you sometimes, and you already know that you don't really like being late. And so an idea of recognizing that this causes you stress, then like what is the game plan? You can set a goal to leave 15 minutes earlier than you otherwise would. You could like set a timer to leave earlier so that you can then be early and like have that peace of mind, and have peace in the effort of getting places rather than the stress of running late. So that's an idea of preparing ahead of time for a stressful situation. Another example drawing from something that we've talked about before, and we'll talk more about it later, is the idea of your sister pressuring you into family vacations, but that you hate saying no over and over. Like that's a cause of stress that we've talked about before. So a possible game plan, and we can talk about this so that you feel okay about it and that it fits the scenario, but a possible game plan would be to set boundaries with your sister in advance. Like if you're anticipating her inviting you to repeatedly planning family vacations in the next few months, you can preempt those invitations by coming up with a game plan of your own, being like, well, sister, I am planning on being home for Christmas, and I don't plan on taking a vacation before then. So then she may still pressure you, but at that point you've come up with a game plan. And so the whole idea of having a game plan is that it can reduce your stress in the moment because you already know how you want to respond. You can respond with, well, I'm already planning on coming for Christmas, so I'm not planning on doing anything any earlier. And then it's sticking to a foundation you've already laid rather than trying to wade through the stress in the moment. So that's the idea of preparing beforehand. And so as we work through the next few months of your recovery, we're going to be actively looking for things that you find stressful and trying to create game plans, especially in the first few months. It's especially helpful to sort of think through and have game plans for those things. So we also want to talk about like what stress looks like, because this can also help you to recognize and evaluate what causes you stress if you recognize how your body and your mind reacts to stressful scenarios. And different people respond to stress differently. So in this case, I'm going to read off a whole bunch of a list of different symptoms of stress, and the trick is to pay attention to your body, because your body is going to tell you when you're overly stressed. So think about ones that you feel like apply to you or have applied to you, and we'll talk about those after too. So I'm just going to go through this list real quick. There's headaches, muscle tension, especially neck or back pain, can be a sign of stress. Fatigue, being overly tired and not really being able to explain the source of being tired. Difficulty falling asleep, or staying asleep once you've fallen asleep. That's a big one for me when I'm stressed. Having an upset stomach, or a dry mouth. Loss of appetite is can be a big sign of stress for some people, or leaning too heavily on comfort foods, whatever your comfort food is. If you go directly to comfort foods more often than you probably would otherwise, that's a sign of stress. Problems focusing is a big one. Trouble remembering things, racing thoughts are all sort of in that same theme of concentration issues. Feeling anxiety, stress leading to anxiety, sort of makes sense. Social withdrawal, if you feel like you're withdrawing from people and you don't have a lot to invest in people right now. Like in some ways that can be natural and good, and in other ways it can be a bad sign of stress. So if you feel like you're experiencing that, we'll talk about it and work through that. Short temper is definitely another one. So these are all things that as you work to pay attention to your body in the same way that you want to pay attention to your body if you're hungry or if you're thirsty. You need to pay attention to your body because you mentally, emotionally, and physically need to de-stress as well. You need to decompress and calm down, and your body needs that, and it will tell you when it's like past due through some of these things. And a lot of people tend to ignore these things, and just sort of push right on through them, which is a bad thing to do. Let's not do that. Or they mistake them for illness, which makes sense because they're physical symptoms. But we want to pay attention to them and recognize them as indicators of stress, because the more that you just try to push through your stress, the more likely you are to go back to alcohol. Like your body's already primed to do that. So we're just trying to change the way that you respond to stress. All right, so there's a couple activities I'm gonna recommend that you think about or begin to engage in, especially in the first 90 days, 2 to 3 months. The first is to manage your time. Time can be a really big source of stress for a lot of people, especially when we put too much on our to-do lists. When we give ourselves too much to do, or sort of bite off more than we can chew with some projects and then don't complete them. The subsequenting failure, I put failure in air quotes because it doesn't necessarily need to be a failure, but when we feel that kind of failure of like not accomplishing what we wanted to accomplish, that's a big source of stress for a lot of people in like a really driven world. So allowing yourself, like proactively managing your time and allowing yourself to not overcommit, to keep your schedule and what you require of yourself very simple, is probably step number one. That's a great place to start in just keeping your expectations low and being content and keeping your stress very low. So along with your daily routine, like going to work and coming home, if you just had 1 or 2 other things on your to-do list for the day, which like would include going to AA meetings or coming to counseling sessions, then you can call that day a success and feel great about it. But the trick is to make it easy for you to reward yourself for a successful day, because that can also counter the stress that you would feel when you didn't feel like you accomplished enough. So that's number one. Another thing that I want you to pay a lot of attention to is how much sleep you're getting, because if you're not getting enough sleep, you won't process your experiences the same way. If you're overtired or exhausted, then you'll struggle to process things throughout. Like things that wouldn't be stressful otherwise will be if you aren't getting enough sleep. So try and make sure that you're getting 8 or 9 hours of sleep and taking care of your body physically that way. Another thing that I want to challenge you to do is to choose 1 or 2 calming activities, things that are specifically calming to you. And I know that you've mentioned cooking. I don't know if that's a calming activity or just something that you like to learn. But if you can choose something like cooking or reading or something that is like a relaxing activity for you, I would choose 1 or 2 of them and work them into your schedule at least a couple times a week, so that you can just relax into a comfortable activity and let your mind sort of go into something that's enjoyable and relaxing. It's great. Even if you feel busy, I would just encourage you to take time to do things that you enjoy. Exercise. This is sort of along the lines of sleep, like giving your body what it needs to deal with stress is really important. And exercise is a big one, because whatever stress, like your pent up angst, you can let out through exercise, and also gain the endorphins that come from exercise that produce happiness. And a great form of exercise that I would specifically recommend is yoga, because it's exercise, and it's a form of meditation, which is sort of another recommended activity, like exercise and meditation. And if you did yoga, you're doing both. So I don't know if you're familiar with meditation, and I can show you a couple websites that help people to meditate. I use one of them. The meditation is basically the activity of like clearing your mind and breathing, which is also a big one in yoga, is just concentrating on your breathing. So I would recommend meditation for sure, to just give yourself a few minutes every day to just let things go, to clear your mind and to be calm. And breathing goes in tandem with that. And while we're on the subject of breathing, that's actually a great thing to do in the moment as well, because even though you will be able to prepare for stress and try to keep your stress low throughout the week, you are going to come across things that are stressful, and breathing is a great thing to do in the moment. And like different people call it different things, like in old cartoons they say like count to 10 before you yell or whatever, like to calm yourself down in those 10 seconds. I had a friend that used to say count to 5 and change your feelings, which is actually what her mother used to say to her. But it just sort of comes down to this few, like deliberately taking a few seconds or a full minute or whatever in a stressful situation, and to just breathe, just let the air flow, and to find a place where you feel in control rather than your emotions feeling in control. So those are the activities that I'll recommend to you, and then and we can talk about them, and I can show you to some websites that can help you engage in some of those activities. But the goal here is to help you feel in control of your life, and in control of your recovery, so that you don't feel driven back to alcohol by being overwhelmed with the stresses in your life. All right, so now we'll open it to you for any questions that you have. All right, thanks, Professor.